Remarkable careers don't just happen. They are defined by a person's culture, global culture, and the culture. It takes a bit of risk, an ability to adapt, and a lot of resilience. I'm Leila Fatah, and welcome to Cultural Voices, a series of unfiltered conversations with people shaping and representing culture and creativity. In this episode, I chat to Don't Sleep founder Dean Bryce about how his Jamaican background and love for music influenced his career shift from wanting to be a lawyer to the music industry. From the early 2000s, he shaped the careers of trailblazers like MJ Cole and Roots Maneuver, and later went on to commemorate 20 years of UK Garage during his year-long stint at Boiler Room. In addition to this, Dean spent just under a decade at Ninja Tune, where he signed South Korean DJ and singer-songwriter Peggy Goo, as well as Mercury Prize winners Speech to Bell and Young Fathers. Also, remember that iconic Cadbury's ad? The one with the gorilla? He was there. Dean, thank you so much for joining us. You've talked a lot about this kind of being forged by the legendary Saxon sound system. I love that.
Yeah.
But for those who don't know, what does that actually mean? What does that actually mean?
Well, first of all, Saxon are a sound system who kind of established themselves in the 70s and 80s
Mhm.
in the UK, one of the pioneers of like UK MC culture and black kind of Jamaican reggae culture. They're friends of the family, so I would go and
Ah,
visit their studio every now and again as a kid. And, I really got inspired by their DIY ethos, doing it on their own. I would see stars like Maxi Priest in the studio,
wow.
Ian Wright. So it really formed a sense of real community and doing it on
Mhm.
your own terms without a big machine behind you. So I guess I'm really inspired by the way that they did it in their own terms.
It's so interesting because I'm reflecting back on my time and as a Gen X 51, that was absolutely how things were done, creating these kind of new
Mm,
things. I mean, that was the 70s, but 80s and 90s. And I think this whole idea of this DIY, I mean, I think I still think that way. I think I'll always think that way. So I can see where
same.
these things come from. And, no matter which way you go, I think that DIY sort of sensibility will always be there. Definitely is for me. So, how do you
Of
think this
course.
kind of, yeah, how do you think this kind of upbringing and personal background really shaped the way you see the world today? What are your thoughts on bringing that that
Um, I,
that sort
I,
of mindset?
I definitely didn't see the world as corporate. I saw it as if you want it, you've really got to achieve it. It wasn't. I didn't even know anything about corporate structure. I didn't know that record
Same.
labels were in these big, powerful offices. I just saw
Yeah.
friends or the family. My dad's mates record stuff in studios in their house, release it on vinyl or play it on radio, and it was a thing. I didn't actually know it was an industry. I didn't know how they were getting paid with it either. I just saw them doing it and thought, okay, that's really interesting. But it became a career for them. So it inspired me to just do for self.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because I literally totally align with that. Like I had no idea that what I do today was actually a job, but I didn't actually think about
Right.
why it wasn't a job. You know what I mean? I just had no
Mm,
idea. Fell into
yeah,
it a bit, but this idea of, but that also doesn't help later because it's hard to navigate these areas. Especially if you've had no access to it in any way at all. And I think that's something that
absolutely.
has to be learned. And we'll talk more about that in a bit. So, what do you
Mm,
think? And were there any specific cultural, obviously you're Jamaican and the sound system and that kind
mm.
of um, cultural background, how has that instilled perspectives you carry through to your work? How does it, instill values,
Oh,
especially in something like the music and advertising industries, which are
yeah.
super tough?
I think in a Jamaican, in a black household, music is like really important. It's
Of
like a
course.
very important aspect of growing up in a household. But one of the cultural things I think every black child is told this, unfortunately, and it's like you need to work twice as hard as
Yeah.
everyone else to be equal. So,
Yeah.
so whenever I found myself in a role or a job, I've known that I should be there. There is obviously, a bit of what's the phrase? But when you kind of are when you doubt yourself, there's a bit of
Yeah.
that. But
That
but I
imposter
understand
syndrome.
imposter syndrome. There you
I
go,
think that's
imposter
what, yeah.
syndrome
Yeah.
for sure. Exactly that. But I've had to work twice as hard at the minimum to even get there. So I think
I hear
every
you.
black child is told that in a black household, Jamaican household. So, that's what you carry into each job interview,
Mhm.
each job that you have is that thing that, I've really worked hard to get here. I deserve to be here.
Yeah, and I love that. I think that just that is just so instilled from young, but also I think what I see and what I'm passionate about is making sure that the creative industries are even seen culturally as a credible job. Because I think that was another message that came through. Get something that's not like
Absolutely.
artistic creative. You can't make money. How will you survive? Like always coming through. So I think that is you know I think, but it also builds resilience. You know what I mean? So
It
we
does.
take what we have and we sort of make it work for us. I think, but yeah, that imposter syndrome.
Exactly.
I think it's always going to be a little bit in the back of no matter how long we've been in the industry. We're always
Always.
thinking about that. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Mm.
So how does that inform the way you approach leadership? Or even your path. So having these values, thinking about, this approach and mindset going in, are there any specific examples on how that's manifested in your career, anywhere along your career line, or in your leadership?
Mm. I reckon I'm very pragmatic. The style of
Okay.
leadership that I do is the best
Mhm.
idea wins. I know there isn't like, it's my way or the highway. It's really getting there as a team. So
Yeah.
that's just manifested from having a good boss and a bad boss, kind of growing up and figuring out the kind of boss that I want to be, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure it's cultural because I think if it was cultural in Jamaican, it would probably be a bit more dogmatic, kind of more old
Yes.
school. It's like we've got to do it
Yeah.
this way, no other way. Because I think
Okay.
that's how things are done in Jamaica. And my grandfather was like really like this is how it's got to be done. So I guess I've like thrown that all away, all that stuff.
Okay.
I've thrown it away and have chosen a pragmatic approach about doing things, and it's more like let's do it together as a team. The
Yeah.
best idea wins. It's not really about my idea; it's the best idea.
Yeah. I love that.
So
And
yeah,
that
so
kind of
saying that,
works.
I've probably thrown away. Sorry,
Go. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no. All I was saying is probably I've thrown away my Jamaican, like dogmatic beliefs. Really.
Okay. And I feel like at the end of the day, it's values versus approach and behaviors. I think maybe slightly different as well. And
Mm.
I love that because it is about the team. And ideas can come from anywhere,
Yeah,
but it's about fostering that in the
absolutely.
right environment in the right way.
Mm.
Tell me a
Mm.
bit about a defining moment in your life that fundamentally changed how you saw your career path. So you were surrounded by music, understood that music was made somehow. What was the moment
Mm.
that happened and you were like, this is the path that I want to go down? And I know you've done a number of different things within music, and within music
Yeah.
within advertising. Was there one defining moment that shaped that?
Yeah, probably at the beginning of my career in music, actually,
Mm.
because I was trying to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a lawyer, actually. I
Okay.
didn't even want to work in music. Yeah, and it's a long story. I wanted to be a lawyer. It's a long family
Tell
story. But I
me.
was
I'm
like, I'm going to get into.
interested.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
basically, my dad was a hustler.
of
He was like a
course.
street guy, a hustler.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to be a lawyer and basically just be like helping people who found
Mhm.
themselves caught up in the criminal justice system.
Sure.
And from the ages of, I think like 10 to 18 or 17, that was what I wanted to be. That was my like path. I want to be a lawyer. But I always loved music. I loved it. It was a passion of mine. I would
Yeah.
DJ, I collect records, but I never thought of it as a job. Right? I never knew how to make money from music. I was like, I can DJ and get like 50 quid,
Yeah.
but that's it. I don't
Sure.
know how to monetize it or get into the
Mhm.
industry. So I worked in HMV record store part time,
Okay.
and a guy came in to the count on the counter. He was buying a CD, and it was MJ Cole. And I was a big garage fan at the time, big MJ Cole fan at the time. And it turns out he managed MJ Cole, and I was like,
Wow.
"Wow, you're a manager, really
Wow.
cool." And he liked my
Yeah.
energy on the
Mm.
counter, and he gave me his business card. So I think then I was doing my A levels. So off my A levels, I found the card at home in the bedroom. I was like, "Oh, that guy, Choose. Let me give him a call." Gave him a call. Went to the office. Went straight to a meeting at a label. And there, I think I'm 18 at the time, so I'm now sitting in the
Wow.
label in a marketing meeting, talking about MJ Cole stuff. I'm just like trying to get some free records. I'm trying to get free records and go back home and play some records.
Yeah.
So we do the yeah. So we do the
Amazing.
meeting, etc. And I get a kind of a taste for the industry. He likes my contributions as a young kid and gives me
Mm,
a job part time working with him in management. So that changed my career path from trying to be a lawyer and then getting into music because I was always trying to put like a square peg in a round hole, right?
mm.
Looking back, I'm
Yes.
I'm a creative, but I was trying to be a non-creative and squarer and be a square.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I realized that I've been fighting it my entire life. Even in school, my A levels were like English, geography, and history. I was told to do the arts, and I was like, no, I want to be a lawyer. I've got to
I'm
do
going to be
this.
alone.
So I was kind of really, yeah. So I was kind of really like looking at the old traditional family background, like, you got to be a lawyer, you got to do this stuff. Even though I love being creative, I was going against myself. So I kind of found myself at age 18 and sort of like, okay, I'm a creative. This is what I should do. So that meeting Choose changed my life and my career path for sure.
It's amazing. I just love that story. I just love it so much because
Mm,
I think also, I've also been reflecting on my career, and I had that moment, that opportunistic chance moment,
mm,
that changed my life and career path completely. And it's
yeah,
about identifying that and grabbing it and running with it, and again,
100%.
I was talking to some friends, when we were talking about the fact that I had no career plan. Like when I arrived, it wasn't like I was coming to
Mm,
be a anything, because I had no idea this was a job. So it's really funny how those opportunistic moments are there for the taking. It's just whether you grab them or not, or whether you sort of like go ahead and
totally.
and shape it. I mean, I just love that story. It's really similar to mine, actually. Have you ever faced any situations in your career path where you've had to choose between personal beliefs and professional expectations? How did you navigate that? Any examples come to
Yeah,
mind?
not per se. Kind of like, I guess it happens a lot working with brands, right? Working with
Yeah.
brands, you've got to choose from the brand that you want to work with and also if they align with your own values.
Hmm.
I've not really had that kind of thing per se, thinking about it.
Hmm.
An example, I guess, an example kind of similar on that example is I brought in somebody from an old job to work with me over at Boiler Room,
Yep.
a young woman, really, really cool. She was very junior, so I remember her pay not really matching up with the rest of the team. So, I
Hmm.
was very aware of that. I was like, okay, once you get a bit of experience, you're going to be matching.
Yeah.
I remember I left before she fully developed. So I didn't know. I was like, you've really got to. I'm leaving shortly, so you really have to kind of get your pay up. And I told her a little note like, this has to go up, right? Because that was my plan. But unfortunately,
Yeah.
I'm leaving now to go and do my own thing. So
Yeah.
really push for that. So not really answering the question per se, but I think personal values are really important, and I try and ensure that whatever I'm doing, it doesn't clash with what I believe in and the
Yeah.
client or my job.
Yeah. And it's hard, it's one of these big conversations at the moment, isn't it? With everything that's happening in the world. And how do you quantify like that line, and that spectrum, and what the actual job and role is. So it's a big conversation. I feel, this kind of like matching up values, beliefs,
It's a
brands,
big debate.
work, etc. It's massive. It's a live conversation. 2025. We're here basically.
Mm.
Okay, let's talk
But
about. Yeah,
saying
go
that
ahead.
though, just saying that, to add to that, I'm always of the kind of perspective that it may be worth considering, right? If you're open from the outset, taking bad money to do good,
Well,
right? So I'm
exactly.
not saying
Yes.
take it to go and buy a Bentley. If you can take bad money and and publicly say this has been taken because I want to do this, I couldn't
Yeah.
afford to go and do this
Yeah.
without taking this money. So I'm saying this is why I'm taking it. Vilify me if you want, but it's for a good cause.
And I think that's really important, because I feel the same way. But also, it's about understanding that there is so many levels of depth around access and equity. And,
Yeah,
going,
yeah,
I want to be able to do this, but I've never had that initial chance, like we've just talked about, to be
Mm.
able to even get to those tables that have weight in the world, you know? So I hear you. It's a big
Of
debate. Maybe
course.
we'll do another podcast around that, because it is a really, really,
You
really
should.
live conversation that we have all the time in the office. So let's get back to you now. Let's talk about resilience. And I feel like resilience is a really, really important like skill and characteristic to have, especially with such uncertain times we're in. Can you share a personal challenge or failure that profoundly shaped your resilience, and therefore built on your creativity? Anything that comes to mind around that?
Yeah. I think I'm not going to mention any names, but when I first started Don't Sleep, my company, we
Hmm.
began with one artist who we managed, and we really put all our energy into this artist. In fact, it was only me at the time, so there wasn't any even an employee. So
Hmm.
one artist who I found was going to leave the country and go back to where they were from, but I really believed in them. I invested time and energy in them. They would stay at my house on a blow-up
Wow.
mattress.
Yeah.
We created a great buzz in the industry, had
Hmm.
several offers from labels, and this artist went from kind of being in their car and being
Hmm.
homeless to being six-figure record deal within how long was it? It was pretty rapid actually, like 10 months. It was pretty fast
Wow.
for somebody to have like
That's
no
that's
money.
fast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I really kind of believe in this artist, like put all that energy and time and money into the artist.
Hmm.
And then after did the deal, a lot of people kind of whisper in your ear and the artist left. So
Wow.
I was,
Okay.
devastated. Like I put all my time and energy because when working with somebody, it's a choice, right?
Yeah.
You've chosen to work with somebody because you believe in them. It's not
Hmm.
because you had to, because you wanted to. So
Right.
when that artist or person doesn't see the value that you've put in, they stayed in your place because for whatever reason
Of
you're going
course.
to meetings together.
Mm.
It's a real partnership.
Of
That was
course.
devastating. I was like, damn, this thing can happen in the industry. So what it led me to go and do is not change how I am,
Mm.
just change how we work slightly. And now we don't sign songs. We don't sign, it's all about people who make songs. We sign people who do songs.
Yes.
So it's not about the individual as much as their art. We're looking into for individuals with a certain type of character who are
Hmm.
trustworthy, who have certain
Hmm.
values. That to me is as important as their talent. So
As the
now it's a
output.
business of
Mm.
people rather than songs, and the art. It's like, how are you as an individual? How can we work you together? It's not just like, that's a great song, let's be partners. It's like, do we like you?
And it's so interesting you say that. I talk so much, and I've talked so much about when people want to do any work. One thing is the output. For you, it's music, or
Mm,
your artist output. For me, it's whatever type, level of communication. But it's the input. That's where the magic happens. It's
100%.
what happens, who's in those conversations, how they act, what that is reflects the output. You know what I'm trying to say? And I feel like people just go, oh,
Absolutely.
the output is the most important thing. It's the input. You're not going to get there without
Yeah,
that front
agreed.
bit.
Agreed.
And I feel like that is something that hopefully becomes even more important as we go into this time where, we just have to make sure that we're looking after people, we really, really are. And they're, and making sure that they share the values. I think the people thing is really important. I say that even about brands. I'm like,
So important.
brands are made up of people and their decisions. Uh, brands don't
Yeah.
make decisions. The people in them make the decisions. So making sure that the shared values at decision making area is something that's interesting for me in what I do. So I love that
Good
idea
point.
of people. How do you think these experiences have prepared you to lead or think differently in your career? And I think you just mentioned you're working slightly differently now. Is there a new approach
Yeah.
to even sort of sourcing new talent, or how do you vet people now then, if that's the approach that you're
We're
going for?
still, yeah, we're still artist friendly. I know one of our pillars is to be artist friendly because I think this
Yeah.
industry can really exploit artists. So we're trying to
Okay.
be as artist friendly as possible because that's one of our pillars. But
Hmm.
I think now we don't jump into kind of working with an artist immediately. It's a process of getting to know somebody for a couple of months.
Yeah.
I think managing somebody is very intimate. You're on the phone a lot. You're like with them more than anybody. I think like record deal is very important, but your manager, the right manager,
Yeah,
is super important as well because you're the
100%.
person who guides them throughout all these things. So even though we're a label as well, on the management side, we're very particular about the character of the
Mm.
people. Let them also assess our character if we're even right for them.
Yeah,
So I
that you
think we
gotta
do a lot of
have
stuff.
you.
We've got a little studio.
Yeah, you gotta have that chemistry, don't you? You gotta have that good working,
You have to.
working, especially as a manager. I mean,
So important.
props to you. It's such an important job, and I think it's hard to do. Sorry, go ahead. So you were talking about your studio. Tell me more.
Yeah, no, so we got a little studio in Kentish Town where we kind of work with our young A&R, and they do demos in the studio for a while. We kind of
Great.
figure out their strengths and weaknesses. So it's a real process. It's not just like you're hot, sign here, let's do a
Go.
partnership. It's like
Yeah.
a bit of a process. Yeah.
Good. Good. I think you've got to set those foundations, or it's very easily gone, isn't it? So, love that. And I think that that's going to really help as
And
well.
boundaries
And
as well, by the way.
well, that's resilience.
Boundaries.
Boundaries. As a
Boundaries.
manager,
I've had
though,
asked before.
how do you qualify sort of availability and access to you and boundaries as a manager? That's really, as an artist manager, that's super
Yeah,
interesting.
it's something that comes with time, and I
Yeah.
try and set that tone, set it immediately. So I
Yeah.
remember we got like, obviously a lot of group chats going on, and I would tell staff like, if it's Sunday, don't reply. This is really important. This is
Yeah.
like really important. The house is on fire, then yes. But if it's like something, a question that can wait till Monday, get back on Monday. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So we'll obviously read it and assess how important it is. But if it's just like any news on this thing, that's going to get ignored, and
Monday.
eventually
Yeah.
that will see that. Yeah, that will see that. Okay, on the weekends there's no reply for anything. On Monday is so. Yeah, it's about setting boundaries and routines really, and a rhythm.
Yeah. I love that actually. Um, do you think that any of your lived experiences across your personal interests, but also your career path, have given you a unique advantage or insight into solving problems or creating opportunities? Do you think that there's something within all those experiences together that goes, I
Mm.
can identify an opportunity or I can solve a problem really rapidly? Or I can see, for me, coming from South Africa, believe me, I have exit strategies all over. I know where the exits are
Yeah.
at any time, so I can rapidly troubleshoot
Yeah.
any situation and get myself out of it. So, what's your sort of secret sauce for like using
Do you know
this
what? It's
this
a
mindset?
yeah. Great question, actually. I think the secret sauce, right? Well, in the UK, right, a lot of popular culture is black culture, right? So
Mm,
especially in music, right?
of course,
So for me, it's second nature. It's not like I've got to be down to be cool. A lot of
you don't have
slang
to think
words
about it.
are Jamaican words.
Yeah,
No, exactly. If kids are like saying a latest slang word, I know what it means because my grandma might have used that word. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So I get the word. Like crepes is the word for shoes. It's not a new word for me. So I've had that word all my life. Whatever, all these things. So for me, I think the source is being from the culture.
yeah,
Right? I don't have to try hard. It's a lived experience for me. I've grown up in it. I've seen
totally.
it. I've smelt it. I breathe it. So when people are talking about marketing certain artists to be authentic, I get it because I get the culture really,
Mm,
really well. I
mm.
haven't trained for it. I haven't studied for it. It's just what I know. In fact, it's all I know. So I think my source is actually like knowing the culture inside out without even reading a book.
And I think that's something that, as you know, I'm super vocal about. If you want to work with any
Mm,
type of community, culture, get the people from those communities and cultures in the room. Like
so
it's
important.
not even rocket science.
So
It's
important.
like not even rocket science. And I feel like that is still something that I have to bang on about. I've been doing it for like 30 years, and I feel like people and brands really can do so well if they just understand those
Mm,
cultural nuggets of gold that you can't learn about, that you know about deeply, and kind of how to do and work within these communities in different places respectfully. You know what I'm trying to say? I feel like that's so
absolutely.
important. It's so important. It's like credibility and respect. And mutual benefit is for me the only way to go when thinking about cultural, whether it's music or communities, whether it's Jamaican. I just feel like
Yep.
that respect is for me one of the foundations of kind of how we work as well.
Mm,
So to get people in the room, I don't know. Can you share an
always.
example of where this personal perspective led through a breakthrough or an unexpected success?
Tricky one.
And it doesn't
This
have
kind of
to
personal
be,
breakthrough.
and
Yeah.
it also doesn't have to be around your Jamaican culture. It's just even the way, the way you explained how you approach music. It's just your lived experience generally. It doesn't have to come from your cultural background.
Yeah. Hmm. I would say, right. So obviously, not obviously, because no one knows. Well, so at Don't Sleep, we manage a variety of
Mm,
artists, right? Some of color, some not of color, whatever. But I think those who are going through certain things, I think we've got a wide team as well. A very diverse team,
yeah.
ethnically very diverse. So I think I can understand people's issues who are from my culture. For instance,
Yeah.
if they're black and they're going through an issue, like
Hmm.
with the first artist, he was from the Caribbean, so I got him immediately. He was going through problems with immigration, which I haven't been through, but I can definitely empathize with and
Of
get like,
course.
okay, this is how you felt. He would tell me
Yeah.
things that he was scared of being deported as being a
Mm,
kid. I would sit at the
mm.
back of the class and wouldn't want to sit at the front because he was scared of being taken away. I was like all these really traumatic things.
Oh,
So
yeah.
obviously I can't understand that. I've not been through that, but I
No.
can highly empathize with that.
Yeah.
So I think, again, being from the culture, I can see things that people think they're being denied opportunities. I can really feel that if they think they're being minimized, we'll talk about microaggressions. And I'm like, yeah, we're trying to avoid and fight for these things to not happen
Mm,
anymore. So I
mm.
think my thing is looking at these things and nipping them in the bud immediately as management, because
Yeah.
it's really important for them to be seen. I want to make sure that all the artists are being seen.
Yeah, and feel like someone's got their back, especially their manager, I would assume,
100%.
Um,
Absolutely,
so
absolutely.
from your music experience, how has your personal way of doing things has led through unexpected success? I mean, Peggy Goo could be one.
Yeah,
Identifying that, or your music sort of like cultural interest and influence. How have you
yeah,
changed through all your different roles? What have you brought to the table that's different to say that maybe what was there
yeah.
before?
My biggest, well, looking back at my career, right?
Yeah.
The thing that I've kind of done with success is being a curator, a selector
Okay.
almost,
Yeah.
right? So whether
Yeah.
it's like working in sync, finding songs for adverts, I was involved in the advert with Cadbury's Gorilla and Phil
I mean,
Collins.
I kind of love
So whether
that
it's
one.
like,
And that's unexpected.
yeah,
I
it's an
did not
iconic
expect you to say
commercial.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally iconic. Love it. Yeah.
So even like working and clearing the songs for that, finding Peggy Goo, bringing in Young Fathers who won the Mercury Prize, Speech
Amazing.
the Bell. It's always been like selecting,
Okay.
and taste. So A&R, I think, is a brief. You've got like a brief from the label. Let's try and find this kind of artist, and you
Mm.
go and find them. Finding songs for adverts, very similar. They want a certain mood for a commercial,
Hmm.
so you go and find that. So looking back at my upbringing in my house, I would hear everything. My dad would play the Bangles, Shabba Ranks, Eurythmics, and I thought they were all black bands, but they were just like his taste was so
Yeah.
wide and
Yeah.
varied, right?
Mm.
So I think in my career, I'm like, okay, I'm a selector. I'm trying to find the best songs when I'm DJing to get everyone moving. I'm trying to find the best song for this commercial. I'm
Yeah.
trying to find the most fitting artist for the label. It's really about curation and taste, which
Mm.
happens to be in my household of hearing all this music growing up. Just happens to like fit in what I choose and how I work.
I love that. And that's kind of what I'm trying to say about a cultural state of mind. It's a cultural state of mind. It comes from where you're from, your interests, and how, remarkable careers are shaped by that.
Mm,
As opposed to in spite of that, and I feel like that's really exciting. I
absolutely.
love that. And I think even, when looking at your bio, incredible like achievements and accomplishments, Dean. And things that have influenced that music culture, but also British culture and also youth culture. So I think there's quite a lot to take away from that, and that's what we're trying to
Mm, thank
understand,
you.
like where and how they come from. So thank you for all your insights on that as well. Tell me about empathy. We're in a world, to be honest, that needs more empathy. Okay, and we also work within
Yeah.
industries that maybe are not so empathetic. Music advertising for you, not so much your own things, but the industry at large. Have
Mm,
you had any experience that shaped the way you lead and connect with others? within these different types of roles and environments? Because I think you went also from independent to, music, to, lots of different types of
Yeah.
environments. Tell me about how your experience have shaped the way you lead and connect with others through these.
So empathy is really important, right? And sometimes I think it's like, just like it's an individual character thing. Like it could be an individual. There could be somebody who's been through the very same things I've been through, who want to just who
Hmm.
don't care, who lack empathy. I'm not sure if it's a star sign thing. I don't really believe in star signs, but I'm a Pisces. People say, "Oh, Pisces, very empathetic." I don't know how
My
much I
mom,
believe that,
my mom,
but
my mom, and
is she
yeah,
Pisces?
yeah, she's Pisces.
But you know what I can say is that people who have been someone I can definitely spot injustice, right? Easy. People
Okay.
who've been a victim of injustice can spot injustice, right? Whether it's
Mm.
something that I don't personally suffer myself, whether it's disability, misogyny, you can spot it because you can experience a form of
Yep.
injustice. So I think once you've experienced that in life, could have been at school or in your career, you're an
Mm.
advocate to go and fight against that because you're like, oh, that's not
Right.
nice. I know how it feels. I've been a victim of that at some point in my life. So I think
Mm.
when you've had that in your life, you will often fight against it. So that's how I think
Wow.
how I
Mm.
work with empathy, being empathetic, is that I'm not down for any of that crap because I've seen it, I've experienced it, different aspects of it. So I try and fight against it in all forms at work anyway,
Yeah,
and in life, of
I
course.
love that. I also feel like that's such a big role to play. You know what I mean? It helps build relationships. It's fostered in collaboration. It's just a different way of approaching work and partnerships or relationships, etc. So for me, it's an important thing. Empathy. Sometimes it can overwhelm me and overtake me. It's just in terms of like
You
feeling
can.
guilty, etc., for all the things we talked about before. But I think just trying to find that balance, but also having that always there, for me, feels like a positive way to do business. And sometimes in our industries, it may feel lacking. Okay, let's talk about paying it forward. So, are there any specific lessons from your personal journey that you prioritize sharing with those that you may mentor, collaborate, not even mentor in sort of, sort of
Mm,
in a formal way, but I'm sure
yeah.
you are mentoring your teams and speaking to them, any specific lessons from your entire journey that you like to share with them? Any examples of that?
Mm, I think network. There's that cliche
Okay.
saying that your network is your net worth. So
Yeah.
important. When I was younger and like vigorous and had mad energy, obviously I've got energy still, but when I had like mad energy, I would always be out at events,
Now you
meeting
take a
people and
smooth,
talking.
yeah,
And I think
a smoothie every morning for
I'm
that
Scooby
that
Breaks.
new energy.
Exactly, but I think empathy, network is so important, right? Meeting people is so important. I think you can't grow by staying at home watching TV. It's really about knowing the right people. Meeting them online is important, but it also in real life is so important. It's vital. So I try and kind of tell my team to go out to gigs all the time, meet other managers, meet artists, just be in the mix because it's really helpful and it's healthy
Yeah,
to meet others. So
absolutely.
network is my biggest takeaway for sure.
Yeah, great. And how do you help others leverage their own perspectives, their own experiences in the work setting? Any success stories or any war stories? Because everyone has their own sort of perspectives on things. How do you embrace that or sort of like, you know, work within that?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is listening, right? You've got to
Mm,
listen. And in music, people don't listen enough. Well, probably in the world, but people, music, obviously, we're listeners. It's our job to listen to music, but
mm,
we don't listen enough. But I think listening is really important. I think looking at their skills and uplifting is again really important. So
mhm.
I remember my team, Julian, excellent guy. He's a real people person. He's very charismatic, and I think
Yeah,
letting somebody be themselves authentically, don't try and change them. He's a real um, guy about town kind of character, and I really
yeah,
embrace that. I really want him to
mm,
be the best version of himself and do
yeah,
that. So I think developing somebody, even with artists, for example. even with artists, not even only staff, but with artists, we have some artists who we've worked with for like 5 years. In the
Mhm.
beginning, they were shy and very insular, and now they're glowing because we've really enforced that, their talent is great, they're very special, and they should really be the best version of themselves. And now they're getting a lot of love and traction, and
Yeah,
they're beaming and glowing. And it's great to look at them as they were at 20 years old. Now they're 25 and are very secure, more secure in themselves. So it's really just like, really embracing and highlighting
yeah.
their real strengths as a human being.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because I feel like it adds to the business, right? You don't want to have the
Oh my God,
same,
totally.
the same type of person, the same kind of perspectives, you know, in the room. I feel like that for me is,
You don't.
a problem. I feel like diversity
Mm.
breeds success, and I love a good debate about something. I really, really do. I'm really, really open to always learning. I love it. Like I'm a sucker for
Mm.
information. So I'm super keen, and I really enjoy that actually. So let's talk about this
Yeah.
creativity that you found at 18. And obviously this is also about
Mm.
creative thinking. You've worked with
Yeah.
inside businesses, you've worked in brands, you've had your own business. Um, are you clear? We talk about this, well, at least you talk about rather, this kind of area of expertise, this innovation at the intersection of authenticity and culture. What does
Mm.
innovation mean to you? What does it mean?
Sometimes there isn't anything new, right? But I
Hmm.
think for us, innovation is doing things our way. One of our slogans is pushing culture forward.
Yep.
So as long as we're pushing things forwards, for us, it's really important. We say pushing
Yep.
things forward in the office. We've got a little poster from Jamaica that says that. But it's really about like, if we're signing artists, right? If you're making techno, are you making exciting techno and
Yes.
pushing it forward and not,
Mm,
and not being derivative? Same with like hip hop and whatever. If we're working with you on the label side or the artist side, are you really adding to culture? Are you really
mm,
kind of changing a
mm.
narrative and doing exciting things? We don't want to copy anybody else, copy the next artist who's big at the moment. We want to do our thing, but
Yeah.
exciting. So our thing really is changing culture is our like, or being in part of culture and pushing it forward is so important to us. So, so, so important to us. So innovation and doing exciting things is our number one.
Yeah, and I love that because I feel the same way about what I do with brands and big businesses. It's about, for me, breaking the formula. You know what I mean? It's like what
Yeah.
happens is you get the same formula on doing things, and I'm like, oh, can we just like break that formula because it just means that you're not going to stand out.
Mm.
And I think people always go innovation, has to be tech. And yes, it can be, and I'm sure they're parts
Mm.
of that, but it's also just about pushing things forward. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But talk to me about technology because obviously we are in a time. Um, what are your thoughts on AI within the music industry and
Well,
technology
I love
generally?
tech, number one.
Yeah, same.
I love
Yeah,
technology. I'm an early adopter on everything.
me
Like
too.
I've been using
I
AI
hear you.
for a
I
couple of
hear
years. Like
you.
I
Yeah,
use all the AIs. I use them all, and I really look AI. It's like okay, I'm not really for like AI generative music. I think that's kind of like making a
yeah.
song by AI. Right now, it's very lazy. It could be exciting in the future,
Mm.
just how sampling was exciting,
Was
when it first
yes,
came
yes.
around. It
Mm,
takes a while to be exciting. There are people who were against drum machines at one point. Do you know what I mean? Like and keyboards, and then
amazing.
like against sampling. So
Yeah,
I'm not a luddite. I'm not saying don't embrace it. I think it's really interesting to be an early adopter and try these things out. But as
yeah.
long as you're being creative, as long as
Yes.
it's being creative, it's really important to be creative. But I use AI all the time. I encourage artists to use AI for
Mhm.
whatever reasons. If it's doing emails or
Yeah.
whatever, researching artwork for your products. If you can't
Mm,
afford to get a
yeah.
designer and you've got a good idea, try AI. You know what I mean? Try AI and see if it works. If not, find somebody else. But I embrace all these things. It's
Mhm.
really important, I think, at this stage to embrace it because it gives you an advantage.
It does. And to be honest, I think you're right. Like for me, it's not about like replacing creativity. For me, that's a no.
No.
It's about
Yeah.
how do we use it as a tool. I mean, there's a productivity tools like emails, as you mentioned, but there's also,
Mm.
we have to experiment with this thing, but I feel like we also have to protect the human side, which for me is the creativity side,
Oh,
is
of
the empathy
course.
side,
Of
is the rest
course.
of it. So I love that. I'm also an early adopter. I actually used to read William Gibson as a teenager. And so for me, when the
Mm.
internet came, I was like, oh my God, the internet's here, cyberspace is here. I was so excited. I was so excited. But yeah, so I'm a science fiction,
Love that.
still love it today, which is a bit of a, I don't think many people know that except my husband, of course, but yeah. Do you see work as a reflection of your personal identity? And how does that, what does that mean, if so?
Yeah, because it is me. It's my taste.
Mm,
It's the badge of honor. I'm proud to work with the staff and artists. It's something that I take very seriously. I'm like being the music guy. It's kind of funny, right? Thinking this the other day, talking to a friend the other day, and it's like
yeah.
sometimes I think I'm missing out on certain things outside of music because I'm so deep into
Yes.
music, and it's
Mm,
totally fine. So I'll go back sometimes on weekends and watch like old films that I've not seen that are culture kind of big things in culture that I've missed out on because
yes.
I was so involved in playing albums that entire year. But I'm proud of it. I'm proud of the achievements, proud of the artists. I am heavily involved in the products and projects that I'm doing.
Yep.
So it really is me. If you work with us on management or recordings, we're involved, not trying to say that we're going to write your album for you or say do this, but our presence is there to support you. So
Yeah.
for me, it's one and the same. I kind of live this. And I guess when you run your own company, you live it as well. So I'm active. So there
Yeah.
isn't really a separation of me and what I do. It's literally, I've made a company around what I do, if that makes any sense.
Oh my goodness, that is so funny. I'm doing this video for my 30th anniversary, and I say in it, I built my career
Mm.
around my lifestyle versus
Oh,
the other way.
same.
Totally. You're like, how do I make money from this thing
Mm.
that I love? And honestly, 30 years have gone by so quickly, Dean. Honestly, I'm just like,
Crazy.
it doesn't feel like the job. You know what I mean? I don't know, it
Yeah.
just feels like an
Mm.
extension of who I am. And I love the hands-on thing, as a fellow business owner, founder of two businesses, like hands-on. That's how I learned how to do business.
Mm. Mm.
It definitely wasn't through business school. It was through,
Yeah.
setbacks and experience. And
100%.
I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for that. Um, do you think there is a specific project or piece of work that feels deeply personal or reflective of your story
Ooh,
that you've done that could have been done at any part of your career?
great question. Do
I
you know
hope you're
what's
prepared
interesting,
for
right?
this. I
So,
hope you're prepared for this one.
do you know what? Interestingly, right? I don't think there's any like. I would say the project of Don't Sleep, right? That is deeply
You.
personal, even in the
Yeah.
name.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
sleep, right? Don't sleep because I've done so much exciting stuff throughout my career, but a lot of times I felt slept on. Right, a lot of times I didn't feel
Mm.
celebrated for my achievements. So that even the name "Don't Sleep" is like don't sleep because I felt slept on doing in front of my
All the
career,
others.
being an employee at these companies.
Yes.
So that name is rebellion in itself. It's like, don't sleep on what I'm going to do next because I'm going to
Yeah.
do it on my own terms. And la, la,
Yeah.
la. There were artists that I couldn't sign who are now like mass. Like a Doja Cat would email me in the beginning about featuring with an
Wow.
artist, and I was told no, we can't sign Doja Cat. All
Wow.
these things, So I'm like, don't sleep now. And also, it's not about empowering me because that's not about that. It's about empowering artists that also, what I mean, slept on as well.
Yes.
So it's not a particular project. The company itself is a project to really uplift those who've been
Mm.
slept on, whether it's us as individuals and my staff, whatever, or the artists. So I think Don't Sleep for me is the thing that I'm proud of, is
Yeah.
the elevation of the ideas that I couldn't execute as an employee elsewhere.
And it's interesting because it almost is all those experiences that have brought you to this place of your own,
100%.
you know,
Yeah.
manifestation of what that needs to be and what that should be and how that
Mm,
could be, different. And that's why it's so exciting. It's kind of like, it's always like, your skills and your learnings build over time. And I feel like sometimes people
mm.
only see the end, but they haven't seen the path. And that's really
Right.
important because I think without those experiences, you might not be where you are today. and doing Don't
Totally.
Sleep, which is, in your sort of like gift of creating it how you want to create it, but with
Mm.
credibility.
Yeah.
So it's super interesting how that pathway for me is a build to get to where you eventually need to
Mm.
be. It's really funny. So I remember
Mm.
my mum when I closed Spin, which was my first company, and I was going over to Adidas, and I was like, oh my god. She's like, listen, this is just another step on the path. At the time I wasn't thinking about looking again at creating a new business like Platform 13, but she was like,
Yeah.
you will get to where you need to go. This is just another step on the path. And I didn't really
Love that.
understand that until later. When you reflect back and you go, okay, that was a really important step to get to
Mm.
where I am now. So I think it feels like it's kind of similar to you. Our paths are so similar, actually, just in terms of but we
Good.
always knew that. We always knew that about each other
Yeah.
since we've met, so it's fine. Um, how do you balance personal inspiration with industry trends or client demands? Because you know what it's like. It might be that they're wanting whatever, but you've got a personal sort of if, thought or
Yeah.
trend. Like, how do you balance that out to make sure that you're getting
Hmm.
across what you need to get across in whatever format that might be?
Great question. I think it's a two-pronged answer. So
Okay.
occasionally we will do some sync stuff for clients. So you might get an ad agency who say they want this particular sound,
Yep.
and I might think it doesn't work. So occasionally you'll sneak in your ideas amongst their brief and say like,
Right.
this is a good one as well. So you might kind of like hint at it. They might go for it or
Yeah.
not, but give them a choice, right? Give them a
Mm.
choice of that. So occasionally, if it's for the client and it's like if their work, it's their brief, then it's their brief, right? We got to
Yeah.
kind of hit their brief. But I will put in a little something, something, if just to kind of show that that might work. If they bite or not is up to them. But
Mm.
when it comes to like industry trends for our work, we don't really care, right? We don't really care because
Great.
we can't follow trends. We can't follow trends because that's not what we do. We don't follow
Yeah.
trends. We
Mm.
just do exciting music. And also it's about zeitgeist, right? As
Yeah.
long as we're in the zeitgeist of doing certain things and not following trends. So I always say to in the office, like Michael Jackson Thriller
Mm.
wouldn't be iconic if it was released now. It was got to be released at the right
In
time,
the
right?
moment. Yes.
Songs that are timeless because they were released at the right time.
Mm.
So our thing is making music or putting out music or working with artists at the right time.
Yeah.
It's all about not trying to jump on a trend, but pulling it out at the right time. It's a feeling, it's zeitgeist, it's culture, just knowing like it's now is the right time to put out this record because it's because it's now, because you kind of feel it, it's part of the culture right now. And then it becomes
It's so
timeless afterwards.
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that. And again, I just it parallels so much with again, the way I approach my work around
Mm,
context, right? Context. I'm like,
mm,
it's
mm.
all about context. So if you're gonna create an ad or create an event or whatever it is, it needs to reflect the era and the generation, the conversations that we have at the moment. And that's the
Totally,
timings for
totally.
it because I feel like sometimes things are too early and you're like, it's not
Mm.
going to land, it's not going to resonate because people are not ready to receive the thing. But, it's about,
Yes.
reading the era defining politics it could be. I mean, look at Kendrick
Mm.
and look at the Super Bowl. That
Yeah.
is for me a reflection of creativity that's built out of the realities of the world. And
Mm.
so for me,
Yep.
that's the way I approach my work. Slightly different to yours because I think yours is obviously more artistic. And so that's also dependent on but I love this idea of timing. I feel like that's a really, really important point. And this trend thing. I mean, if I talk again about trending topics within my, area, literally, I would be a rich person if I talk about it anymore. And I talk about like if I
Mm.
get paid a penny for every sort of like time I mention, stop jumping onto trends brands because you're too late by the time you get through your entire system of approvals. It's already gone.
Mm.
Even that. So I think timings. I love that different for each other, but still within that sort of contextual piece. I think is important. Um, what is So how so from those sort of early days and still follows to now, has your personal views evolved over the years on things? And how's that
Ooh,
shaped your career trajectory? Like, has your personal view from like when we talked about wanting to be a lawyer, then discovering that music
yeah.
and creativity was the passion. And then I noticed that you went, into an advertise. Were you working in an advertising agency, or was that just
So
syncing from a
a
music?
sync
Yeah,
agency,
a sync agent.
a private sync
Yes,
agency, yeah. Yeah.
because you went
So
from
has
artist
my
management to yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. So the question is, has my ideas,
Have
views changed?
yeah, your personal views evolved over the years that you went
Yeah, evolved.
from artist management and those early sort of like that British sound that's very, that we all love,
Yeah,
to syncing, to, A&R, to Boiler Room, to Ninja Tune, to, these are
yeah,
all aspects of the music industry, Was there a
yeah.
specific pathway, or were you like, I just want to have all these different experiences, or how did that happen? And was it
They've
connected
all
to
changed. So
personal views? Yeah.
there wasn't even any goal. So when I was working in management with the guy Chus who managed MJ Cole and Roots Maneuver, that was
Yeah.
my first job in music. I wasn't thinking about anything. I was just like, this is so exciting. We're going to
Sucking
like
it
the
up.
MOBO Awards and all this, and
Yeah.
Mercury Awards. And I was like, this is
Yeah.
great. I was 19 until I was 20 or
Wow.
21. So it was just
Yeah.
like I didn't. I and then I worked at a major label, BMG. I did marketing for like Outkast, Love Below during that era. So at a major label, when I was there, I was trying to be like the exec. I wanted to go up the ladder and be like the
Right.
president of the label and
Yes.
be like, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Just be like that person. And then you kind of learn about the culture of corporate and it's not, it's tricky, it's different. You can't really
Yeah.
just get up there and be like, I want to be like this person. So then you reflect back to your time as a young person around
Hmm.
Saxon and independence. Then it's like indie labels, Ninja Tune, then you go back to the indie world and you get back to like kind of get your hands dirty again, and then you do that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
they've always changed. My goals have always changed. You know, at Boiler
Right.
Room, it was like the tagline then was like to be the MTV of underground music, you know. So every job that I've worked, I've kind of lived it. I'm like, right,
Yeah.
now we're going to do this. We're going to be kings of the underground or whatever,
Mm.
and then we're going to be the MTV of this.
Mm.
So my views have always changed in every single job that
Yeah.
I've done, and I think now at Don't Sleep, it's just literally being inspired by independence, being inspired
Yes.
by XLs, being inspired by TDE in the US. So right now it's leaning really heavy on culture, whereas
Yes.
before it was not leaning heavy on culture. It was like on the job itself. So signing exciting artists, doing great shows at Boiler Room, doing amazing syncs. But now it's culture at large. It's the broadness of culture.
Do you think that that's a bit full circle to from your
Oh my
growing
God,
up
yeah,
days? That yeah, you're finally like, okay,
fully.
I'm home now. I'm back,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
can add all
And
this
what
value
I've
to
done
it now. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly what I've done,
Mm.
I've taken things from certain jobs, everything
Of
I've worked in
course.
that. So the A&R skills, the management skills, the branding skills. So yeah, I've pulled all the things that I think are really important from each role and have made it my own.
Yeah. Fantastic. What do you hope others take away from your story? You know, personally and
Oh.
professionally as well. What's the legacy?
Well, the legacy is we can all do it. I'm a guy who was raised in a council house in South London. Who didn't know anything about the music industry, who
Yeah.
wanted to be a lawyer, who didn't know. I loved music. That was my thing. Even as a kid, I would like be on my roller skates like, with a Walkman and playing stuff. But I didn't know about working in it. It wasn't a thing. There was lack of information. Now you got YouTube. You can
Yeah.
Google things. But I think what people can take from this story is that we can all do it without many resources. You know, I didn't
Yes.
come from a family with money. I had a strong family. My granddad had his own company, which I saw you can own your own stuff. My dad was
Mhm.
a hustler. In a way, that's a company in a way, kind of. But because you're making money doing your thing, so
Entrepreneurial, entrepreneurial.
yeah,
Yeah.
entrepreneur. Right? So I saw you can do things like on your own, you know. So but the message is right. We can all do it. We can all do it, and there shouldn't really be any gatekeepers to culture because there are different entry points. You can get in on your own. I think you're
Of
more
course.
authentic anyway if you've got a true story to go and tell.
I love that. So if you were to, what would you say to your younger self about the importance of staying true to yourself?
I would tell my younger self,
How
stop
important is
trying to
that?
be a square.
Or in a round hole?
Yeah, trying to be
Or
a
just
square
try,
and
or do
be
you just
creative
stop
because
there? Yeah, yeah.
no, it's not trying to be a square because I was like, would be I bet with family of cousins playing records like in the 80s, like late 80s, early 90s, and like
Mm, mm.
rapping to records or whatever, doing really exciting things, and then being at school and forcing it out of me, like, no, you don't want to be creative. Like, I'm being told by my
Wow.
art teacher to go and do design, and I was like, no, sir, I want to do
And you're
history,
like,
and I
no,
hated history.
I'm gonna do geography.
Especially the ones we were learning, especially what we were learning at school. It was the most boring form of history. History now, I love history. It's very rich and very exciting.
Yeah,
But what we learned at
yeah,
school didn't inspire me. I love like
of
African
course.
history. I mean, what I learned at school, it was non inspiring and it was modern history. I didn't feel attached to it in any
Mm.
way, but I did it because I had to do it. Because I thought to be a lawyer, I got to do history. And so I would say to my younger self, don't be a square. Just embrace creativity. Embrace yourself. Be you.
Yeah, I love that. And then just looking forward now, what does success look to you now? Considering both
Mm.
your achievements and personal fulfillment as well. So if you could think about, what is that for you now? What does success feel like going forward?
Well, on a work or personal
Both,
or
both.
both.
Well, they're connected, aren't they?
But they are connected, right? I would say, right. Work-wise, it's always being a part of culture. Whether that's a cultural
Yeah.
movement, being a part of culture
Mhm.
is really important for me, right? Is really, really important because that for me is success. To be mentioned in names of people that have pushed culture forward is really important to me. Being part of the narrative is really important to me.
Yes.
Whether that's especially in Jamaica. If anybody in Jamaica says like Dean Bryce is like killing it, I'd go crazy. I'd be like, oh my
You'll
god,
be
that's
like,
the real thing
done.
for me
Yeah.
because that's like I can retire. I can retire. But on
It's,
a personal
it's
level,
credibility,
look,
isn't it? It's
oh my
credibility
god,
if someone
100%,
mentions you in
hundred
Jamaica.
percent.
That would be it. Yeah. Go
It's
ahead.
just like a reggae artist is like Dean. I'm like job done, job done.
Done.
But on
Yeah.
a personal level, it's
Yeah.
always friends and family. If friends and family and on a personal level,
Yeah.
it's friends and family. You know, if my family go on about my achievements work wise, and I failed, right? It should be
Mm.
Dean is a good brother, a great
Yeah.
cousin, uncle, whatever son, or in the future, dad. Those for me are the really important things. When it comes to family, I
Yes.
want them to really be happy with how I am as a human being. That's so important to me. But on the
Yeah.
work sphere, it's culture.
It's definitely Jamaica. It's definitely a shout out from Jamaica.
100%. It's Vibes Cartel is saying, big up Dean
100%.
Bryce. I'm like, yes.
Yes. Well, listen, big up Dean Bryce from here in London.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much for your
it.
time. This has been an
Thank you.
absolute,
Appreciated.
absolute pleasure. As always, again, just loving the stories. So yeah, I'm sure our audience will too. But thank you so much, Dean. Thank you so much. That was awesome. I love that. Did you
All
enjoy
good. They're
that?
fun. Fun, 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 fun.